Red Bull just pulled the trigger on a total upgrade package, and it could change the direction of their entire season. After several races where the gap to their main rivals looked increasingly uncomfortable, the team finally decided that small tweaks weren't going to be enough. What followed was a deep internal investigation inside the factory involving engineers, aerodynamicists, and performance analysts trying to understand one key question. Why was a car that dominated so convincingly before suddenly struggling to keep up? The early signs of trouble appeared in the opening rounds of the season. On paper, the RB package still looked strong. Solid straight line speed, stable high-speed balance, and a platform that should have been competitive almost everywhere. But once the cars hit the track, the data started telling a different story. Drivers reported inconsistent balance. Performance gains expected from earlier development phases were not translating properly to real-world conditions. And most worrying of all, simulation predictions were no longer lining up cleanly with what the team was seeing during race weekends. That mismatch triggered a deeper investigation back at the factory. According to multiple reports, Red Bull's engineers began digging through aerodynamic correlation data, simulator feedback, and wind tunnel results to pinpoint where the performance loss was coming from. The conclusion was clear. The problem wasn't just set up, and it wasn't just the track characteristics. There were underlying aerodynamic limitations that needed a much bigger response. So instead of incremental fixes, Red Bull decided to prepare a much more aggressive solution. A large upgrade package, described internally as one of the biggest development pushes of the season, is now being readied ahead of the Miami race weekend. The goal is simple: close the gap and restore the performance level the team expects from its car. But the big question now is this: will this massive upgrade be enough to bring Red Bull back to the front? Subscribe to the channel and stay with us, because in this video we're going to break down exactly what went wrong and why Red Bull believes this Miami upgrade could be the turning point of their season. To understand why Red Bull has reached this point, we have to start with the scale of the problem that emerged in the first 3 races of the 2026 season. The team that dominated Formula One not long ago suddenly found itself struggling just to stay in touch with the leading group. After the opening rounds, Red Bull was sitting 6th in the Constructors' Championship with only 16 points scored. For a team used to fighting for victories almost every weekend, that number alone tells you how far the performance had slipped. Max Verstappen, normally a constant presence at the front, was unable to challenge the leaders. Instead, Red Bull often found itself fighting cars that on paper should have been behind them. The gap was not small either. According to team principal Laurent Mekies, the performance deficit to the front running teams was significant. We didn't see it because we were again a distant 4th, and it doesn't interest anyone to be a distant 4th, Mekies admitted. But the overall gap is what we have been talking about. It's about 1 second to the best guys and half a second to the best Ferraris. In Formula One terms, a 1 second deficit is enormous. And the worrying part for Red Bull was that the weakness did not appear to come from a single obvious source. In fact, one area that surprisingly was not the main problem was the power unit. Red Bull entered 2026 with its own powertrain project, Red Bull Powertrains, now developed internally with Ford branding. Considering it was the team's first attempt at operating as a full manufacturer, expectations had been cautious. But early feedback suggested the engine itself was performing relatively well. Drivers indicated that the power unit was not the main factor limiting the car's performance. Reliability was also broadly comparable to rivals such as Mercedes. Instead, the issues appeared to lie elsewhere. The core weakness was the behavior of the RB22 and the way the car generated and delivered aerodynamic load. Across the opening races, the RB22 showed a narrow operating window and unpredictable balance. Engineers observed a recurring pattern: understeer on corner entry followed by oversteer on corner exit. That combination is one of the most difficult characteristics for a driver to manage. It forces constant corrections, compromises corner speed, and makes it extremely difficult to extract consistent lap time. Even a driver like Verstappen, famous for controlling unstable cars, was forced to adapt his driving style. And when a Formula One car demands that level of correction, the lap time inevitably suffers. The team's own analysis confirmed the behavior was linked to the relationship between aerodynamic load generation and the mechanical platform of the car. In simple terms, the RB22 was producing downforce, but not in a way that the suspension and chassis could consistently manage. This meant the car's aerodynamic map was unstable across different cornering speeds and track conditions. Laurent Mekies explained that the team had identified performance losses in specific cornering conditions. There's a layer where in certain cornering speed and cornering conditions we lose some performance, compared to what our package is supposed to give us. He said, so this we need to work on. That statement is revealing. It suggests the car's theoretical performance, what the simulations predicted, was higher than what the drivers could actually extract on track. When that kind of correlation problem appears, the only solution is deep investigation, and that is exactly what Red Bull used the unexpected break before Miami to do. With the cancellation of 2 races in the Middle East, Formula One team suddenly had several weeks away from racing. For Red Bull, this was an opportunity they badly needed. Instead of preparing for another race weekend, engineers returned to Milton Keynes to analyze every piece of data collected so far. Mekies described the process very clearly. "We need the time to deep dive into our data," he said. "We need the time to simulate back what we see in the data into the tunnel, into our simulator, try some sensitivities, and all of that we can do without racing. This is the classic Formula One recovery process. Engineers take real-world track data, feed it back into the simulator and wind tunnel models, and test how the car responds to different aerodynamic and mechanical changes. The aim is to restore correlation, making sure the tools used to design the car reflect reality again. And once that understanding begins to emerge, development can move forward again." However, Red Bull's challenge is not just about aerodynamics. Another factor affecting the RB22 is weight. Estimates suggest the car may be running as much as 10 kgs above the minimum weight limit. That might not sound dramatic, but in Formula One terms it is significant. Every extra kilogram costs lap time, affects weight distribution, and makes it harder to optimize tire performance. That is why part of Red Bull's upgrade package focuses on introducing revised components that appear visually similar, but are engineered to be lighter. Reducing weight delivers several benefits at once: better acceleration, improved energy deployment efficiency, and greater flexibility in how the team positions ballast within the car. But even with these improvements coming, the team itself is careful not to promise miracles. Mekies has repeatedly emphasized that closing the gap to the front will take time. "I don't think we should expect miracles about the amplitude of closing the gap because the gap is substantial," he said. Instead, the goal for Miami is more realistic. Red Bull wants to create a car that drivers can finally push with confidence again. But certainly what we would like to see is to have a car where our drivers can push again. Mekies explained. "Measure a gap to competition in these conditions when we are able to push, and then the rest will be pure development to the end of the year." In other words, Miami is not necessarily about instant victories. It is about restoring the foundation of the car. And there is another reason why Red Bull finds itself in this position. Part of the difficulty comes from a strategic decision made last year. During the 2025 season, the team chose to keep developing its previous car deep into the championship battle, rather than fully switching resources to the 2026 project. That decision helped keep the title fight alive, but it also delayed work on the RB22. Looking back, Mekies admitted that the choice had consequences. "Of course, the time and energy we invested for the late push last year, does it have an impact on where you start 2026? Of course it does," he said. "So of course, we pay a bit of the price today." But he was also clear that the team does not regret the decision. Instead, the philosophy inside Milton Keynes remains the same: understand the problem, solve it, and keep developing. "We are not happy with the starting point," Mekies admitted. "But we think we will get through these difficulties." And that belief comes from experience. This is the same organization that has repeatedly recovered from difficult starts in the past. Red Bull's strength has always been its ability to analyze weaknesses quickly and respond with aggressive development. That process is now fully underway. The Miami upgrade package represents the first visible step in that recovery. It aims to stabilize the aerodynamic platform, improve the interaction between chassis and aero load, and reduce the car's weight, all while giving the drivers a wider operating window. None of those changes alone will suddenly transform the RB18 into the fastest car on the grid, but together, they could start to close the gap. And once a team like Red Bull begins to understand its car properly again, development to accelerate very quickly. That is why the next race weekend in Miami could become one of the most important moments of Red Bull's entire season. Not because it guarantees immediate results, but because it may reveal whether the team has finally identified the root cause of its problems. If the upgrades move the car in the right direction, the recovery could already be underway. But if the gap remains the same, the challenge facing Red Bull may be even bigger than it currently appears. So now the question goes to you. Do you think this massive Miami upgrade will finally bring Red Bull back into the fight at the front? Or has the team already fallen too far behind Mercedes, Ferrari, and McLaren to recover this season? Let me know what you think in the comments below. I'm really curious to hear your analysis. Subscribe my YouTube channel Global Formula Apex